Anyway, all right.
Yeah, so you've always been one of my favorite kind of thinkers and movers and shakers. I know you come from Alaska. You got into mainly into computers and technology and hacking and all kinds of stuff a while back, and now you're making masks.
Yeah, a weird progression. I didn't plan it this way, but yeah, we had been working on creating new kinds of like high tech apparel companies. Reinventing the way that the apparel industry works because it's just one of the worst industries in the world and has lots of problems. And it's interesting because now, because of this crisis, it's decimating the industry. Apparel is like really, really doomed. I mean, lots of businesses are having trouble. The apparel industry is really doomed. They're going out of business left and right. They're filing for bankruptcy. I mean, there were a lot of the retailers were up against the ropes already with, stores going out of business, but now it's brands, now it's manufacturers. So oddly, what we're doing was kind of architected to solve a lot of the problems that are exacerbated by this crisis. And so very counterintuitively, we're thriving. So we may be the only apparel company left after this, but we were able to, just because of how our business works, we were able to switch gears really quickly, and we started trying to get masks to people and make a product that could help with that. And we came up with the idea on March 16th. We worked out a product, a brand, supply chain, production, everything, and launched on April 1st. And it's selling like crazy. So now we're just trying to keep up with production. So
Okay, I'm gonna demo one of your masks here, just so.
okay, cool.
So
Yeah,
it comes with an N95, right?
yeah, we're N95, which is the Chinese equivalent or Asian equivalent.
Yeah, and then the actual kind of main body of the mask you put on first, like that, right?
Ah, sure. Here,
And then, um, and then you put your mask on.
yeah, just like that. You don't even need the ear loops. You just stick it on and then pull this up and it'll hold it snug in place. And it's a way to like make it a little more comfortable to wear a mask. We could tuck the loops in a bit silly so you don't look so dorky.
Oh, they're sticking out like little antenna. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. And then like, it makes you look cooler on the Zoom calls, because people need to look cool on Zoom calls. They can't do it if they're just wearing a surgical mask. So we're making it a little more stylish. Americans have a lot of aversion to wearing masks anyway. They don't like it has all these negative associations. They don't want to look sick. So this is a way to make it a little more cool to wear a mask. And we like the design that you have is awesome for the folks from the studio. I love it.
I was wearing this out the other day, and I really like them a lot. I feel like they have a cool look. I must admit I did take it off before I went into a bank.
It's the first time in my life that we're allowed to wear masks into banks, and it's encouraged. I mean, I'm getting a lot of mileage out of that. Every other time I've worn a mask into a bank led to a lot of disaster.
Yeah, I know. I guess I'll have to do it just to say I did it.
Yeah, for sure.
Now tell me when you started doing these masks.
Yeah,
This is, of course, this is our proprietary coffee, sleep, dance,
yep,
repeat kind of like
yep.
logo. But when you started doing masks, I know you're making these out of a really high quality material. And what was it like trying to put together a production supply chain
I mean, then
dead center in the middle of the COVID-19 thing?
I mean, it's the way. I mean, to appreciate it, you got to understand like the way apparel is normally made is you would design something like this 9 months in advance, fax it off to China, wait for some old Mr. Miyagi dude to figure out how to make copies of it, make a bunch of, he'd find a supply chain for the fabric and the printing and everything, and then like make a bunch of them, put them on a ship, They'd come across the ocean, land in a warehouse, and eventually a few of them would end up on a shelf at Nordstrom and you'd buy one. And
Yeah.
that process is very inefficient and messy and not really very profitable. And but the worst part is it's super wasteful because you're guessing in advance what's going to sell. Nobody guesses right. So about 30% of the clothes in the world that are manufactured are never sold. So last year, the industry made 150 billion garments, and 55% of that is already in landfills. It's
That's an intense statistic.
imagine if like the auto industry never sold or drove 30% of the cars they made and just threw them away.
Right.
Like the apparel's almost as big, and it's the second worst industry in the world after oil for environmental damage. 10% of global CO2 emissions, 20% of global freshwater pollution is from making clothes.
Yeah.
So
Then you
those are
have
the
to
kinds
wear,
of, what's that?
then you have to warehouse it.
Yeah, I mean, they're just guessing wrong all the time. A business based on guessing is not a good business. So our business is basically about trying to re-architect all this so that we manufacture apparel after you buy now. You click buy now, we make your clothes and ship them out the next day. So these things don't exist. We have no inventory. We don't have any. When you click buy now, we're going to make it and ship it out within 2 days.
Now, I just want to ask the the pair of leggings that these were cut from. I mean, did anyone wear those first?
They're not. These are not made from leggings. We used to make leggings here in Seattle for 6 years to kind of prove this on-demand production model.
Hmm.
Now we're trying to build a much bigger company that could make a lot more than leggings, so that's what we've been working towards. But we had to regroup because we can't do the things we planned right now. So we're building, we're making this product instead, which is working out really well. So it's what the world needs right now. So we're doing it. And what we do is every time we sell one of these products, it's called Incognito, we give away one of these filters. And these are hard to get.
Hmm.
And this is what you need to be safe. So we give these to our customers, and then we also give a bunch of them away to charity. Every time we sell one, we give one away to charity as well. And that's very expensive right now, but that's what we're trying to do to help because people need to wear a mask, like you said, going to the bank, going to the doctor, going to the grocery store, going to work, we have to start wearing masks. And so we're just trying to make it, more accessible for people to do.
They feel nice. They're a nice material. They're a
Oh
cool.
yeah, that one. So we've been using exotic fabrics from Italy. We did that for our leggings, and now we're doing it for this. This is a amazing fabric. It's made from a fiber that's half the size of microfiber.
Hmm.
So it's super soft. The fabric is super thin, but it's carbon sanded, so it has that like plush feeling. It feels like better than your pajamas, but it's thin.
You haven't felt my pajamas anytime soon, but
I remember. No,
no, you don't.
no,
So
I don't. I
it,
don't.
it, it feels fantastic. No, I really like the material. It's really comfortable on my face.
No, good.
We had a meeting with our instructor staff over Zoom about
Yeah,
an hour ago, and one of the main topics of conversation was how we as a business, as a dance school, are going to re-enter into having what the milestones are that have to be reached in order for us to start teaching dance again in person. Because right now we're teaching our classes over Zoom,
yeah,
and we came up with a lot of different things, but certainly one of them is that uh, along with the possibility of like testing prior to coming to classes. I don't know. There's all these governmental rules. The six, obviously until the 6 foot distancing thing is, unless you have freakishly long arms, you're not going to be partner dancing together anytime soon. But when we do reopen, maybe we'll be having people wear masks for a period of time. It's hard to say, of course. We were just kind of brainstorming.
yeah. I mean, I think there are ideas, right? I mean, you got to remember that this is we're still in early stages of learning about this disease,
Hmm.
learning about its properties, how it spreads, who it's at risk who's at high risk of it, how to treat it, how to prevent it, how to create a vaccine, those kinds of things. It's devastating for partner dancers because we really need to be touching each other. I think there's kind of good news and bad news. Like in some sense, it's hard because it will be longer than any of us can fathom and want to be getting back to the point where we could show up and dance with strangers every night of the week and get away with that. It's going to be hard, even if COVID disappeared overnight, like people would still be nervous, and that's going to have an effect. The other side of it is salsa dancers are obsessed, and we're going to go dance no matter what. So it's not the most unsafe thing we've done. So I think there will be something happening. As far as the school goes, I think they have more tools. So one is the distance. Good time to work on shines. Good time to work on, figuring out how to do your body rolls and pop your booty and all the stuff that you need to do to dance. But another one is that you just, every step you take to reduce exposure, it has a huge effect, right? So distance is one. A mask is like putting another 10 feet or something between you and everybody else, right? May not do that in class, but maybe instead of going and dancing with every other, if I went to salsa class, I wouldn't dance with every follow. Maybe you dance with one all night, right?
Yes.
And that would be a big one because, and I've chosen to do that. I have, I think I have a small number of friends who I spend time with during the lockdown. I think it's important not to go insane because the world doesn't need me to go insane right now. So it's an acceptable risk, and we've kind of overdone it by just being general about the rules. Don't go anywhere, don't see anyone, don't touch anything, never leave the house. It's overdoing it for the number of cases that we have and for the risk profile. I mean, I think we had to do that at first because people can only seem to follow simple rules. But over time, we're going to need to use our brains, and we're going to need to, assess risk in a more fine-grained fashion. And that means for something like the studio, if we can open up, we're going to have to say, okay, well, classes might be able to only be so big. The truth is a lot of the students are going to know, everybody knows about COVID, right? So everybody's going to know if you got symptoms, you don't go out.
Yeah, it's not like there's going to be anyone in class who's going to and someone's going to be like, "Dude, did you hear what happened last month and a half?" And person's like, "No, I know what happened. I was traveling."
Oh,
That's not going to happen, right?
Is that new kind of Pokemon?
You'll
Yeah.
never believe what happened. As a school, Pablos, I mean, we're going to be we're going to err on the side of caution to the absolute last second. I mean, we feel that responsibility ourselves just because we have so many instructors, and our decisions as a company are made as a group.
Yeah. Wow.
So we kind of get together, and there's upwards of 40 instructors that have to kind of all be on the same page about it.
I mean, I don't know that that's the comprehensive way of. I mean, if I were you, I'd probably start. There's going to be a point where you or a number of your instructors are comfortable enough, your students are comfortable enough that they're ready to get back at it with some measures and following some recommendations. And I think I would really make it voluntary. Let the people who are comfortable choose to take the risk. That's what they're going to need to do at work. That's what they're going to need to do in the rest of their lives. I mean, and people need to start taking responsibility for their choices. But I would, what you don't want to be doing is be in a position where you're coercing your instructors to show up if they don't feel comfortable.
We keep half of our instructors in a dungeon underneath the school anyway. So
Yeah, always thought that was a good policy because then they're around when you need them.
Yep.
And, the only diseases they got are the ones that they got from each other. And it's a really great policy.
None of that was true.
So,
So, public disclaimer. So, I mean,
this probably needs a lot of those disclaimers.
there, I should have, I mean, I put up a giant disclaimer just right next to your name. So,
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Pablos Holman,
Please
disclaimer. No, it was
just don't sue us for anything he says.
well, it is an interesting period of time exactly right now this week, certainly because I know Boeing went back. About 10,000 Boeing employees are going to go back to work this week. They're going to be in proximity with each other. I know that they're working in staggered shifts,
Yeah.
and there's going to be distancing precautions and mask.
We do it here.
That's
We
right.
do it here.
Yeah. How if I know that there's no reason for me to ask this question of you other than you're super smart. What do you think? When do you think that dance schools could come back online? Could start teaching again, based on what you can see right now?
I mean, the the right answer is that I think what people are missing is they need to understand the way that a lot of people don't understand how a pandemic works. And which is forgivable because they had the luxury of not living through one.
Right.
We've been studying this stuff for a long time and doing a lot of, the computational models on the spread of disease and, going back, we did it with things like malaria and tuberculosis and, smallpox even. And then, when Ebola happened, we started trying to understand these things. And we did a lot of work on modeling pandemics. And the answer you get from that is that it's very scary, right? And so, we've been worried about it for a long time. We sort of failed to get anybody to pay attention. Hopefully this will have at least that positive effect. But the point I'm trying to make is, what the simple way to think about it is you get a dial that you can turn between deaths from COVID and deaths from everything else, right? That it's caused by the measures you're taking. So we're in a really bad spot where we've done the lockdowns, which probably was a wise thing to do at the beginning to buy us time to study and understand this. But the economic damage from doing the lockdowns is probably worse, right? And even less fair in the sense that, it really is devastating for people at the bottom of the economic food chain, right? And so those folks are dying of everything else sooner and in greater numbers than they would have without the lockdowns. Poverty is a real killer. Not being able to go to work is not good for anybody. So we really need to solve that.
It's
And
incredibly depressing.
you got to recognize, like, the politicians have painted themselves into a corner because as soon as they let up the lockdowns, COVID deaths are going to go up. That's just a given.
Hmm.
The less locked down we are, the more contact there is, the more that COVID spreads and the deaths go up. And that will continue to be true until there's a vaccine. So, or a more effective testing and treatment regimen. We're trying to develop all those things. So yeah.
Let me ask you. Sorry to interrupt there, brother. I wanted, because this stuff is really fascinating. I wanted to tie this into kind of like your past when
Yeah.
because I know you personally were involved in some ways with like the modeling of disease spread
Right.
and the,
So we created, I used to work for the last 12 years. I worked for Nathan Myhrvold and created a lab called the Intellectual Ventures Lab, where we did a lot of work on inventing technology to solve global health problems and solve some of the problems in the developing world. And the approach was to kind of use this high-tech toolkit and knowledge and experience and understanding that we have to see if we could come up with ways to help. Look, almost 1 million people a year die of malaria,
Hmm.
right? We haven't had a million COVID deaths yet. We probably will, but we're going to have a million COVID deaths this year. But we've been ignoring the fact that, you know, African kids die at this rate every year,
Hmm.
right? So there's a lot of perspective that's kind of being lost. You know, this is targeting rich Americans for a change, and so that's why we're having this massive reaction. But the one of the projects we started a long time ago is called the Institute for Disease Modeling. So what I was just describing for computational models, these are very powerful tools that humans have. You know, never in human history have we had a chance to test all of our possible futures in software before we do them in the real world, right? And now we can do that. So what's possible is to use that modeling to help figure out what what the best course of action is, right? What for the things that you care about, what's the best balance you can get. Now, we did all that work with Bill Gates. You know, he funds that work. If you want a good, reasonable perspective on COVID and what we should do about it, you should listen to Bill Gates. He's the best funded, most educated public figure on this topic right now. And
Can I
he
ask
had,
you a question about that, Pablos?
yeah,
And I want to ask you a question about that, because I know, and I don't like this whole show would be a lot more entertaining if we just
mhm.
discussed nothing but conspiracy theories.
Oh yeah, we should
That's
do
not
that.
the purpose of the what I guess what I'm asking is a lot of people that I see online, there's a
Yeah,
little bit of a disconnect as to why Bill Gates should be listened to. And I know this is someone that you've
sure.
been around these people. Why is it that you feel people should listen to Bill Gates?
Um,
Besides the fact that we know he's super smart.
it's not just that he's super smart. You know, Bill for a long time has dedicated himself to learning about basically all the problems that cause kids to die, right? Um, a lot of that is infectious disease, and so you know there's lots of different courses of activity that I don't even track with the Gates Foundation, and they're funding a lot of different projects around the world. Wherever kids are dying, they're there. But Bill personally is an amazing, um, has an amazing capacity to learn. He's quite smart, he's a good reader, and he's great at comprehension and recall. So he's able to go, I mean, like when we worked on malaria with Bill, you know, he was able to learn more about malaria than any of us could. I mean, it was amazing.
Hmm.
Um, what people don't, I mean, I think there is certainly like, you know, you can make up fictions about anything and making up a story that, you know, Bill Gates is the richest man in the world and therefore he must want all the rest of the money too. And so he's going to have to come up with some, you know, crazy microchip that he can embed in a virus and spread around the world so that people do what he wants. I mean, I don't know. They just make shit up.
Hmm.
It, it's completely unfounded. It's so hard to do something, anything, even when you're telling everybody exactly what you want to do, right? Conspiracy theories are almost always completely baseless because they are supposing that there's some secret thing going on behind closed doors. If you're doing something in secret behind closed doors, it's very hard to get anything done.
Hmm.
So imagine if you were just trying to run a salsa studio in secret.
How do you know I don't?
I would know because I'm on the Illuminati board. I mean, it's hard to do. It's hard to do anything when you're broadcasting. You guys have a billboard, and it's hard,
Yeah.
right? So I would say, you know, that is certainly some entertainment value to that stuff, but it's really not the case, and I guarantee you, it is not what's going on with Bill Gates.
Right.
You know, I would know because I would probably be the guy whose job was to figure out how to invent the.
Yeah. Now you've been involved in like the counterculture of hacking,
Yeah,
ethical hacking,
right.
just sort of like online but off grid
Mm.
stuff,
Yeah,
right?
It's a
How do you
parent
feel
wife.
about because one of the ideas that's been floated to do with the dance community certainly as well, we would go back to full scale classes when there were testing and tracking models out there. Testing and tracking is super scary for lots of people just because obviously it's a fertile breeding ground for conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists' fears and nightmares. How do you personally feel abstractive dancing about the whole question of tracking
Yeah.
and
Well, the problem, so these are good tools, but they're not good for COVID yet, right? So, I mean, testing can be used in different contexts, and we certainly should have done more testing sooner, especially in this country. We should have prepared for that type of thing. I highly recommend that you watch Bill Gates' TED Talk from 5 or 6 years ago, where we were trying to, you know, get Bill to get people to pay attention, because we could have prepared for this kind of thing, and handled it much better and saved a lot of lives. It's too late for that. Testing going forward, I mean, look, if you could test everybody every week or two, you could really put a dent in it because you could catch people and treat them as quickly as possible. We also need a treatment, which we don't really have figured out yet, but you could, at the very least, you could isolate them. And then tracking, so contact tracing is basically, if it's not clear to you, it's just saying, okay, if we find somebody with the disease, we want to go look and see for the time that they were asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic, who did they have close contact with?
Hmm.
Because we are all wearing tracking devices all the time that know exactly where we are and who we're around and what we're doing, we can actually do extraordinarily sophisticated contact tracing now.
Hmm.
And so, of course, you've probably seen the news about Apple and Google working on that. All these tools, yes, can be abused. Yes, they can be used to erode privacy, which is very disappointing thing to have to do. But now is probably the time to do it. Contact tracing with COVID, it's still a little bit unknown how successful that will be because there's a lot of asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic people, and doing contact, tracing everybody for 2 weeks, it's too many people to be useful. So that's very tough. But you could at least get a list of people maybe to try and test. I think a lot of work needs to go into developing those things, and there are solutions that are unlikely to help us in the very short term. Is the answer, right?
I
So
believe though that we will actually experience that contact tracing thing here in Washington.
I think there's a high probability that in Washington we would be the kind of society that would sign up early to test it out.
Hmm.
You've seen people in Seattle are the type of folks who want to do everything they can to help. They want to follow all the rules.
Right.
They're definitely proactive. That's not true in every place in the world. There are entire countries that are belligerent about, if you look at what's happening in Brazil, they're belligerent about doing lockdowns and doing anything. They're just going to party their way till they're dead, which is a different culture, and you're supposed to respect that. But anyway, in Seattle, we are good at that kind of thing, and we're relatively comfortable with technology and relatively happy with giving up our civil liberties to be tracked all the time. So I think we will do it early. So contact tracing, has a history. So for example, one of the projects we worked on was with the disease modeling group was Ebola. The first Ebola outbreak, 12,000 lives were lost. Now, Ebola is much more infectious and much more deadly than COVID, right? And we didn't understand it at first, and so it just spread, and lots of people lost their lives. The second Ebola outbreak, only 12 lives were lost, right? That's a 3 order of magnitude improvement in a couple years, and the reason is using that type of computational modeling, we're able to optimize ring vaccination campaigns, meaning as soon as we spot an outbreak, we're able to go trace everybody that person had come in contact with, go vaccinate those people, treat them, whatever needed to be done. And you can't vaccinate people after they got the disease, but vaccinate people in the region, and then treat people and isolate them and keep it from spreading. Only 12 lives lost. That's extraordinary improvement. That's what's possible if you pay attention and do the things that we're recommending. That's why I say listen to Bill Gates. If you say, because not just because he's smart, he's been working on this, and he's a good spokesman for the scientific community behind figuring out what works. By the time Bill is making a recommendation, it's a good one. That's not true for almost anyone else.
Right. Let me ask you this, because you've always, one of the things I've always loved about your explanations of things is you put things in a good broader context that makes small and seemingly heightened or dangerous details seem less dangerous or less scary.
Yeah.
I've over the years that I've known you, I've heard you do that on TED Talks. I've seen you do it. You know, you've talked. I'll call you up late at night and be like, dude, what have you?
What about the conspiracy theory?
The Germans were actually creating some in the second, and you'll be like, yeah, well, blah 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 blah, and I'll be like, oh, okay. So for people who are scared of the idea, and there are a lot of people out there, and I can't at all point a finger at those people and go, you're idiots, because it's such a giant change from just one generation ago.
Yeah.
The idea of basically your every move during the day being traced.
Yeah.
Or the idea that you had to have your cell phone, your tracking device on you.
Yeah.
These are things that only criminals or it was something that was very nefarious and very draconian sounding.
Yeah.
What perspective can you give us on that maybe makes that seem a little more palatable?
Right. So there's the way I would think about it is, there's this kind of curve to technology adoption, right? We desperately want to adopt a lot of new technologies because they can make things better, right? And they have. You and I grew up in a time where we were admonished for there were like training programs in my elementary school to teach you not to get in a car with a stranger. And now I literally have an app on my phone to summon a stranger to pick me up in their car. Right. And the kid uses it, and I tell her to, and I pay for it, like everything. Right. So the world has changed, right? But if it were a high-risk thing, and if lots of Uber drivers turned into kidnappers and rapists, well, then we would want to evolve on that and not use Uber so liberally, right? Right. But we don't have that problem. It turned out to be quite safe, and it turned out to be useful and economical, and it's really been a positive thing for a lot of people who didn't have the same kind of transportation options that I do. And right. So the world is changing, and at first we tend to overdo it. We tend to, you remember the first time you got on Instagram, you didn't do anything for 2 weeks except, look at pictures on Instagram. But then you build an immunity, and you learn to figure out and assess, like, how much of this is making my life better and how much of it is too much and making my life worse. Same thing with
what we're talking about. I'm still on Instagram just as much.
But. Yeah, well, you don't have time for it because you're on TikTok now, right? So it's you have to learn to take responsibility for how much of that you do. Now, when you talk about these large scale initiatives like contact tracing, and possibly mandated, as it is happening in China, right? In China you have not got citizens, you've got subjects, and it's a different game. So the government's very easily able to mandate things like contact tracing. And so, there'll probably, be a good test to find out how well it works, right? And if it works well for them, then we'll probably want to adopt it, and the process for doing that will be different. But basically the point is, all these technologies, it's a moving target. At first we overdo it. We discover all the failure modes and unintended consequences and negative side effects, and then we have to re-architect to solve for those. And, I'm somebody who deeply believes in personal liberty and personal privacy and autonomy for individuals to make their own choices about what's best for them and their family and their community. And I don't really want, to be tracked by somebody if I didn't choose it, right? But this is an extraordinary time and place. So what we need to do is figure out, okay, if we're going to do contact tracing on our phones, what's the way to do it that's without compromising individual privacy to the best of our ability? What's the way to do it temporarily or in a way that doesn't hand all that data over to the government or advertisers or Google or Facebook or anybody else that I don't want to have it? So those things are totally possible. We can architect, privacy enhanced technologies, but it's extra work. And so we just need to make sure that we don't give up on that and demand those things. And we'll get that.
How and I'm not going to stick on this subject for a while, but I'm really interested in it because I know that you, as a hacker, you have the ability to get into my phone or my computer anytime you really want to. I've seen I've seen you demonstrate some pretty crazy technology over the years that you've just kind of
Yeah,
house again. Like, check this out. This is pretty cool. It'll
right,
make a credit card turn into a transformer if it comes within 10 feet or whatever.
right.
And is it actually realistic that these contacts and this information isn't going to be used to just make more money from us?
I mean, there are always bad actors, right? And there are always people, people and companies and organizations with the incentive to take advantage of whatever they can, right? So, all the kinds of things you see people complain about, like with Facebook, like when's the last time you wrote a check to Facebook? Like, when's the last time you went a day without using Facebook or Instagram or something else that they gave you for free, right? Like, it's not their fault. You signed up for this, and they're going to monetize the hell out of you. That's the job. That's the deal you made with the devil. And if you don't like it, you don't have to use it. But that's just the game. Same with Google, right? So I think there's a lot of societal frustration with the way these companies are monetizing our data about us, knowledge about us. But we gave them every bit of data, and we chose that, and because we wanted the free candy, and that's what's going on. So I don't feel the same way about it as most people. I think that personal responsibility is really important, and I think people need to take responsibility for that. There are ways to use all these tools differently. There are plenty of alternatives to Instagram and Facebook that nobody uses because that enhance your privacy, right? They're totally anonymous or pseudonymous. You do all those things without Facebook and Instagram, but we are lazy, and so we've chosen the easy route, and then we want to blame Facebook for the results. That's not really reasonable, I don't think. So those are just examples. I think it's really different story when governments are doing it. We have a lot of stories that are really important that were hard won, not just in the Cold War, but back in World War II and before that, with governments acting poorly and all over Africa with genocides. Data about citizens, I don't think should be collected on a large scale. I really don't. And I think that's one of the problems we're having now is we live in a world where it's just so easy to collect data that we're doing it. And eventually it'll end up in the hands of somebody who might have got elected that you don't think is so smart, who uses it for things you don't like. So I think it's again, these are choices that we're making and giving up our hard-won freedoms and the liberty that we that we really founded our country on, that we've tried to preserve at great cost a lot of times, and to give it all up for a false sense of security, I don't think it's a good idea.
Right.
But why
really have that security anyway? They can take our information if they want it anyway.
they can, but they shouldn't necessarily be able to, right? That's not the idea behind a nation like this one anyway, right?
Pablo,
So,
sorry, go ahead.
I don't know why I'm even talking about that stuff.
Well, it's super interesting. I mean, it's really interesting. I've been talking about on these chats. I've been talking about nothing but crossbody leads and body rolls and shikochis and right hand turns, and so it's really cool too to talk about this stuff because it
I,
matters to answers.
here's what I think. Look, ma'am, use your brain for a minute, right? Dancers have um, have a lot of contact with one person at a time. If you get one good partner, it's okay. It might not be the best experience of life, but you could dance for hours with one partner,
Hmm.
right? People who are training do that.
Hmm.
So pick one. Just pick one. If every dancer picks one partner that they're going to isolate with, right? You can go dance with that one partner. I think it makes, we've all been quarantined. We're all clean. We're not, none of us have, hardly any of us have COVID. If everybody who's a social dancer picked one partner, and then we went and danced in places where we had, 6 to 10 feet between couples, I think the incremental risk is, from what I've seen and what I know so far, pretty damn close to zero. Right now, you're going to have a couple failures. Some of these folks are going to get COVID. Some of them are even going to die, but some of them are going to die anyway of staying home and going insane. So I think there's that possibility. Another thing I thought would be cool for you guys to organize is the flash mobs. We used to do flash mobs when there wasn't a pandemic. Everybody's home learning it from a video, and then we show up and do it 6 feet away from each other in public. We could still be doing that with almost every dance style. And you
It's
could,
it was as long as it was legal and ethical, I'd be down. I know that a friend of ours recently got was actually a cousin of one of the people that works for us, one of our staff, went to get their nails done in New York
oh,
in a and there was some, I don't know, the nail salon was contacting people personally and they were setting this stuff up and she got arrested this morning, spent the day in jail. So I'd hate, first of all, ethically, I would, as a studio owner, as a community leader, I would have to personally handle it in a way that,
getting your nails did is a non-essential thing.
you know, um, nail salons are going to be busy when we reopen. I know that much.
I mean, look, this is part of the problem people don't understand. We really need the nail salons, right? Not because you need your nails done, because those people need an income, right? It's the worst thing to take these people's jobs away from them. The government can't bail out every nail artist indefinitely.
Or every dance instructor.
Same for dance instructors. Like,
We haven't gotten bailed out yet. We've applied for the Paycheck Protection Program. I hope we get it, but we have not received it yet. So here's how I see it going down based on what you're saying. There are these websites for arranged marriages in India where you basically vet your two people and you show all your attributes. So parents of these kids will get on there and be like, my kid is this amount of education, this IQ, did these honors, blah blah blah. Let's see how. So we could have a site like that, and you could go on it. You could find a dance partner that matched up with your lifestyle and risk protocols,
sign me up.
and then you could get somehow chipped together.
You don't even need a chip. Just
I,
dance together. Look, if there's anybody out there who's adventuresome enough to go outside and dance with me, I will do it. And it won't be illegal because I'm an essential business.
you are now. Let's change the topic here for a second. And again, I'm not going into conspiracy theories because
Okay. Might as well.
But
You already got me exposed.
but here's the question I have. There are a ton of people out there
Yeah.
who are afraid of 5G.
Yeah.
Now, I remember being at your lab years ago,
Yeah.
and you were describing to me
Yeah.
the way 5G would function. And
Yeah.
this was years ago. I remember you showing me sort of the model, and you guys had a machine or something that did a simulation, and you were like, it's going to function this way. It's going to be by all these different contact points. And I remember, obviously, I had that gut reaction because I grew up
Yeah.
raised by wolves, and I
Yep.
try to
Sure.
distance myself from radiation, and I try to be healthy. And I remember having that reaction of like, it sounds scary.
Yeah.
Can you say anything to people out there who,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and I don't shame those people. I don't actually, I don't like it when friends of mine shame anyone. I don't care if you're a flat earther. I don't think anyone deserves to tell
Well,
you you're a fucking idiot, period, because you're a human being. But there's a lot of people, including some intelligent people I know, who are scared of 5G.
yeah.
What can you say about that?
Have you ever listened to FM radio?
Occasionally.
Yeah. You know those towers up on Queen Anne?
Those huge, yeah, I can see them blinking at night. Yep.
Those are there's FM radio towers there. That's where like, KUOW comes from or whatever, right?
Right.
50,000 watts. Doesn't that sound like a lot of power?
Um, I'm assuming it's a ton of power.
Sounds
I was walking by there the other day and I remember thinking, geez, it's a formidable structure. So what you're saying is that thing does that put out comparable radiation or?
blasting radiation in every direction, hoping some of it lands on FM radios somewhere in the city. All right. And that's not the only thing going on those towers, but I'm just giving you a sense. Like,
Okay.
you know, the phone, the amount of power the amplifier in your phone can put out probably zero point 0.3 watts max,
Hmm.
and that power drops off. The curve for it is insane. Like it just drops off so fast that if you don't have it embedded in your skull, it's not even going to do anything. So, but never mind that. Look, I'm not going to educate anybody who doesn't want to be educated. Just
Yep.
remember when cell phones first came out, remember the brick phone?
Yes.
People were shoving that against their head. Those things were, I think, 3 watts.
Okay.
The very first ones, and then it pretty quickly went down to 0.9 watts. Um, the only way to get a significant amount of power into you is from the phone itself. The antenna, the towers are too far away from your head to irradiate you. Now, people have had this same theory ever since the 80s when we had the first cell phone, right? Cell phones are irradiating us with microwaves and microwaving your brain, and we're going to give everybody cancer. Do you know anybody who's died of cell phone radiation in your entire life?
As far as I know, not a single person.
Not even, I haven't even heard of a single person, not just people I know, but the ones I don't know. Like it's not a thing. Doesn't happen. There's no evidence that that's happened. So to freak out about it now is kind of a tired story that doesn't hold up very well. 5G makes people think, oh, because 5G has greater capacity to move data. The reason is what happens with 5G is, so in the antennas you saw in my lab were developed to make 5G better, because what happens in 5G is instead of an antenna that just broadcasts everywhere and hopes some of it gets to your phone, what 5G can do is aim a spotlight at a user, right? And it can follow you around. It can actually target where the phone is that it needs to talk to. So instead of spraying radiation everywhere, it's only aiming it like a laser kind of at the phone that it needs to talk to. That's called, and so we didn't have that technology before. Now we do, and so that's what's making 5G capable of having much greater capacity, because it can aim a spotlight at me, it can aim a spotlight at you, it can reuse that spectrum and give us both super fast speeds, right? We're not talking over each other. And so it's a much more efficient way of using the spectrum that we have. So 5G is actually an improvement. I'm not claiming it's a health improvement, because I don't think there was a health problem to begin with. But you're going to be exposed essentially to less radiation, because you're not getting all the radio waves from the things that aren't your business. So I don't think the way to deal with these things is to freak out proactively. I think it's just, we're going to deploy 5G on a large scale globally. If there's a problem and people start dropping like flies, then what we're going to do, we're going to turn it down or shut it down or regroup and change, I mean, and so um, even even complaining about, I would say, like, the number of lives saved by the fact that we have cell phones is uncountable. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm not saying it not to diminish anyone's suffering. And if someone dies because 5G irradiated them, that is going to be a sad thing. But we will most certainly learn from that and regroup immediately. But the math shows us that we're not creating risk. So
So you, as someone that like worked in it on it from its earlier,
yeah.
from its inception, you feel safe about it. That's what you're
Oh
saying.
yeah, no question. I'm actually really excited about it. It's unfortunate that this technology is in the hands of cell carriers because they're some of the crummiest companies we have. But yeah, it's gonna be amazing. So we have 5G. That's making it possible to get broadband to everyone.
Mm.
Fast, data to everyone and everything. If you go now, if you guys, now that the sky is clear, if it's real dark at night, you can see the Starlink satellites going, the new ones. Every few minutes, boom, you'll see one whiz by.
Mm.
Those are LEO satellites. Those are the ones that SpaceX put up that so that we can get cell coverage everywhere via satellite, not just towers. So we'll be able to do broadband to those satellites. They're not made for cell phones as much as just getting broadband everywhere. But you got to remember, like, we still have a couple billion people who don't have internet
Mm.
in the world. That's what we got to solve. It's not enough to just make these things for rich people. The job isn't done until you take that technology and bring it to the rest of the world. So 5G and some of the LEO satellite networks are making it possible for us to get to the last 2 billion people, bring them online. I mean, it's going to be the most amazing thing for improving their quality of life and helping them get more educated and helping them become part of the economies that we have. So I'm really excited about that stuff. I mean, look, this is a tough time. People are all panicked and they're all suffering in different ways, and it's hard. It's true even for me. But if we use this as a learning experience and as the wake up call, we can be ready for the next one, which could be dramatically more contagious, dramatically more lethal, right? It could be engineered. I mean, these viruses are the one thing that scares us. I'm not scared of nuclear war, not scared of 5G, not scared of artificial intelligence. I'm scared of pandemics. And it's largely because humans are doing a poor job of reacting to them. So if we could get proactive and develop some of these tools so that we can, identify these new viruses, contain them early, develop vaccines rapidly, distribute them globally, we can really put a dent in this. We could keep from having this happen again. If we don't learn from this, then in the next 20 years it'll happen again, but worse, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the message. The thing that scared, for a moment there, like a couple weeks ago, I think I called you. I remember feeling like everyone on earth is on the same team for the first time in my life. I'd gone weeks without hearing about an election. We all had a common enemy and this virus, and it
Mm.
felt awesome in a sense. I mean, yeah, I was panicked also, but it felt amazing to have that solidarity. And I already see it being eroded. It's already being politicized, and people are already falling on the same line they did with the election before about what happened and what should have happened and who decided and so that's really sad because we could, instead of having, a small but vocal contingent of anti-vaxxers, we could end up with 1 billion anti-vaxxers after this because of the politicization of the issue.
Mm.
That's the really sad thing, because this is a wake-up call. This is our chance to get our shit together and learn to fight viruses. And I think a lot of people are going to be pretty counterproductive about that. So that was my way to cheer you up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good summary, Pablo. How are we doing on time? We're
I don't know. It's almost 6.
okay, so we
Almost
just
7.
just got a little more. As a person who's been in the arcane tech industries for quite a while, how
Mm.
far off are we from having virtual avatar holograms to dance with? Tactile response included.
Oh, uh, it's pretty tough. I mean, the reason is, I mean, you could see the progression with animation, right? So if you remember how, like, when Toy Story came out, we
Hmm.
all freaked out because it was so photorealistic. It looked like real toys, but it was animated. And they cheated by not having things like skin and hair, which were hard, and those things took another decade to develop. Now we have, fucking Sully and like hair and skin, and everything looks amazing and real, and deep fakes and stuff. So it's easy. Um, getting going through that progression with something tactile is going to take decades. We don't even have the basis for it yet, right? And the problem is it doesn't start working until you get all the way across the uncanny valley, which is a way of describing, if it's close but not all the way close, right? We're evolved to look at another human and try and derive a connection to them just from how they move, just from looking at their eyes, their facial expressions, those micro expressions. There's so much there, and we don't even understand it on an objective level yet. And so to be able to have robots that emulate it or something, I mean, we're a ways off. So
I just want a hologram. I just want a VR mask or something, and I want to see my favorites. I could be like I'm dancing with Carol Flores today.
I know, right?
And when I do the turn wrong, she looks at me and she's like, that wasn't, I don't,
That's my fantasy too. Yeah, Carol.
is that going to happen anytime soon?
I mean, you can put it on and you can see her, but you won't feel her. Right? We'll get there. We'll get there soon with see her, but you won't. But it'll be a while before you feel her.
I'll let Carol Flores know.
Yeah, I know. I want to feel her too. Hi,
Well,
Carol.
Carol's amazing. Good segue. Man, it's been really cool talking to you. It's such a different.
uh, I wish I was. I mean, I'm normally more positive and optimistic, but this is a hard one because I feel like I have to explain a lot, and it's hard to do that in an upbeat fashion. So I apologize for my bad attitude.
No,
But
I think
but
your attitude is fantastic, and I really feel like you maybe shed some light on some simple ideas that maybe people
yeah,
who not just are susceptible, but there's so much information out there right now, and
yeah.
the average person gets most of their lifeline of news and socialization and everything through their chosen social media
I
group.
don't
And
think I don't think the news is going to help. Like you should definitely stop watching the news.
yeah,
Definitely work on all your other hobbies that you can do, whatever they are. Like that's healthy stuff. Call your friends and family, talk to them about anything you can besides COVID. I know we just spent an hour talking about it, even though it's supposed to be a dance studio. But try to do that. I mean, there's a lot of things people can do to stay healthy. And the truth is, find a way to help. Like we're distributing masks. It's not a big deal. It's the least we can do, but we're doing it because it helps. It helps a little bit, and it helps keep the team from going home and panicking. That's their other option. So find
yeah,
a way to.
we've been doing that too. We've been delivering coffee to hospitals, and
Yeah,
coffee and pastries and kind of healthy snacks to hospitals as from our coffee shop during this time. And I agree with you. Doing something to help. It's also really it helps relieve depression because
yeah, for
very
sure.
few things relieve depression as much as helping someone else.
Humans are wired to work,
Yeah.
right? You need to feel needed, and what people don't realize with all this, you know, mindfulness and balancing is not working, right? And the reason for a lot of people it's not working. What actually works is working. You go to work, people need you, you do something to contribute. If you're working on some shit you don't believe in, don't do that. That won't work. But if you're working on something you believe in, you won't have depression. You won't have, I'm sorry, some of you will. You won't have that
Well,
feeling, malaise of feeling useless. I mean, it's a big difference. And so I think underrated these days.
It definitely is. The people who need the most charity work these days are singles. They're suffering.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit to that one. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to get into being single during the time of COVID-19. I'll leave that for TikTok.
Leave that for TikTok. If anybody wants to talk about being single, they can hit me up on whatever, Instagram, Facebook, Google. I'm on Zoom.
Well, it's been fantastic. Again, these are your masks. The brand is where it's got this cool little blue logo over here. It's
Incognito.
Incognito.
Yep. Incognito.
Incognito.
Yeah, and you can go to it's goincognito.com or Instagram or whatever.
And
So
you can upload your design, your company logo, whatever, and have it.
we do them for different brands. We're doing collaborations with about to launch MLB collab, hopefully NFL and NBA soon. So
I think I'm gonna cut some ear holes in mine, possibly.
go nuts. You can do it. Make
Yeah,
your
I'm gonna customize mine, dude. It's fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you so much, Pablos Holman,
yeah. Thanks, you guys. Have fun.
for your perspective, and we look forward to seeing you dancing sometime in the not too distant future.
I look forward to being dancing.
All right, brother. Peace out.
Okay, bye.